All righty. So what we're going to do is today we're going to be able to use Schoology's gradebook to support all of our students. So Schoology is our LMS for secondary classes, and learning how to use the gradebook is going to be super crucial for high quality implementation. Now, before we get started, I do want to point out that it is super important for you to connect at some point with your admin to see how exactly you're using Schoology. So the first question you need to ask is, are we doing Passback? And what gradebook am I using? So if you're doing Passback, awesome, you know it already. You got the thumbs up from your admin. Perfect. Keep on chugging. If you're not sure, please, please, please ask your admin, because they will know that. Drea might not know off the top of her head. So the first thing we're going to tackle is our gradebook setup and information about Passback. So Passback essentially is this beautiful magical tool that Dots works very, very hard on. And what it does is it makes it so that you don't have to do dual entry. So you keep your grades in Schoology. Schoology then takes your overall grade and blips it over into IC. I obviously don't write the code for this. So if you want a super techy answer to that, let's connect offline and I will get you the information you need. But long story short, it takes your overall grade, and depending on if your school is doing Passback and how they're doing Passback, it can post to progress, eligibility, and final, which means that you will not have to enter grades in Schoology and in IC. If you want Passback and your school is not opted in, tell your admin, because they have to go through a series of steps in order to qualify for Passback. It's not automatic. Schools have to sign up and be enrolled for it. If you want more information about Passback or getting your admin signed up for Passback, anything like that, let's connect later offline and I will help you out as best as I can. All right, so when we're setting up our grades, the first thing we're going to do, and I recommend that this is the first thing you do before you put in assignments or anything like that, is we're going to do our grade setup. So when we do our grade setup, we're going to add our categories, and we're also going to make sure that our scales are set correctly. So I think it will be more beneficial for me to show you this via Schoology. So while we're waiting for this to load, if you're a person who likes to do this side by side, go ahead, split your screen, be watching this presentation in one window, and then you can do your own thing in your sandbox course in another window. If you want to just listen to me and my soft, soothing voice, please continue to do that. If you want to just listen and follow along, open up another tab, live your own life. However is going to best support you. Remember, this recording or this session is being recorded, so you can return to it at any time after that recording has posted. So I'm making sure that it loads very slowly on purpose so that everybody has an opportunity to go onto Schoology, get everything the way they need it to, open up one of their classes, preferably your sandbox course, because that's not going to have any detrimental effects to actual students.
And just remember that we won't have time for questions during the first part. That will happen in the second part of the presentation. So even if you're following along and run into something, we're going to have to either put it in the doc or wait till the second part of the presentation to get those questions answered.
All right, we're just going to use this. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to show you how to do is to add some categories. So our categories are going to be how we overall weight our courses. And so this is going to be super dependent on what your school's expectations are. So every school has something a little bit different. Some schools have a full school-wide policy of we have major, minor, and practice. Some schools have department-based grade category setups, as every social studies department or every social studies class has the same category setup, and every math class has the same category setup, but maybe they're not the same, and that's okay. So definitely check with your school leadership to see what the expectations are around setting up your grade categories. So once you have that information, all you're going to do is you hit this add button. So here I'm in grade setup, and then you see I'm on this page right here. I'm going to hit add. And so then it's going to tell me to create my category. And so I'm going to say that this is my practice category. And I'm going to go ahead and create it. And so then I can add in all of my categories that I need. So once I have my categories, you can see that I have this weight categories box checked. So if you don't have it checked, yours will look like this. You're going to want to check it to make sure that those are weighted. And so once you hit that check mark, I'm going to see my weight appear here and then the percentage here. Now, the super important thing that I always like to make sure of is that my weight matches my percent. So let's say that I want my practice to be 50% of my grade, and I want my minor to be 20% of my grade, and then I want my major to be 30% of my grade. So I want to make sure that these all match up to each other. Because what if they don't add up to each other, what that's going to tell me is that one, I struggled with math a little bit and they don't add up to 100%. And so it's going to adjust it here. So let's say that I accidentally made my minor or my major 40. I want it 40%. So if I want it to be 40%, but this doesn't add up to 100, I'll see it reflected in my actual percentage here. So you can see how that's adjusted the rest of my settings. So if you see that these two are different, you just want to make sure that you have done all of your math correctly in making sure that it adds up to 100. So I can see that all of these match now. And now before I do anything else, I'm just going to scroll down and I'm going to hit Save Changes. So all of my beautiful work is saved. So again, I did all of this and I just scrolled down to the very bottom and I hit this blue Save Changes button. So now once I have this, I'm going to make sure that my gradebook scale is set correctly. Again, I'm going to talk to my administration and I'm going to see what the expectation is. Now, if they say, whatever, I don't really care what grade scale you use, we're not doing Passback, cool, 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 you can select what you want to. I recommend that you try to stick with either DPS, HS, honors grading scale, or you do the DPS, MS letter grade scale. MS is for middle school, HS is for high school. So if I teach 6th grade social studies, I'm going to select my DPS middle school letter grade scale. If I teach 9th grade world geography, I'm going to select my high school. So once I've selected, again, I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to hit Save Changes. So now I have some extra optional things that I can do. So this round period / final grades is optional. Again, I would just, to be safe, check with my building administration, see if that's a choice that I can make as an individual classroom teacher. But what that means is that if I have this checked and I have a student who has an 89.7% in my class, that will end up rounding up to a 90%, giving them that A. If I want them to keep that 99.7% and that's what they, or the 89.7% and that's what they get, then I'm going to make sure that that is unchecked. So rounding my period final grades is going to round up. Now, the big thing when you're going into your advanced settings, I recommend if you are a new Schoology user, just don't mess with any of these. Just leave them unchecked and it is okay. And then once you get more comfortable with Schoology, you want to start doing more things, then you can start to play with these settings. So what we never, ever, ever want to do is we don't ever want to use this course override column. Don't do it. Just say no. Don't ever select it. If you would like to use the grade period override column, you can select this one. Again, if you are new to Schoology, this is the first time you're setting up your gradebook, I don't recommend that you select any of these. Now for your visibility settings, this is what students and parents will be able to see. I also don't recommend selecting either of these because you'll get a lot of confusion and questions around how come I can see this grade, but I can't see this grade, or I used to be able to see this grade and now I can't see it. Again, I recommend that you don't mess with it. If you want some one-on-one support about your classroom in specifically, and if these are going to be good tools for you, I would love it if we connected offline about that and we can walk through all of your options. And the last thing I'm going to talk about, the last two things I'm going to talk about is my stars here and then the copy settings feature. So my stars, what that means is it's going to auto default. So let's say that I know 90% of my assignments that I make in Schoology are going to be practice grades. If I click this star, what it means is that it's going to default to my practice category when I make an assignment. And I can always change that later on, but that star means that it will default there. Same thing for my scales here. The star means it is going to default to that scale. Now I can also toggle over here to rubrics. And so if I use rubrics in my course or I want to create some rubrics, I can do that here. And so I can make my rubrics and then they'll all be saved and I can just attach them to assignments when I need to attach them to assignments. And then lastly, we have this copy settings button here. So only do this once. And so when you're setting up your grades at the very beginning of the year, you have to be very careful when you are copying your settings over, because every time you hit this copy button, it is going to copy over the whatever you have selected. So right now I have my categories, grading scales, and rubrics. That's all going to copy over each time I hit copy. So if I hit this copy button twice, that means that it's going to give me 2 major categories, 2 minor categories, and 2 practice categories. And that's going to end up messing up my gradebooks because it's going to impact the overall weight here. And so if you're super worried about it, you don't even want to risk it, cool. Just do it by hand. As you can see, it took us a few minutes to set up for our classes. If you do use the copy settings, again, please only do it once, because if you continuously copy to your courses, it's going to make duplicate categories, and that's going to be a headache to get rid of later, because then you have different assignments copied to different categories, and it's going to take a lot more time later on than for you to just manually input those settings into your courses. So once we have our gradebook set up, so mine is all ready to go here, we can start looking at the features of our gradebook. So as you can see here, I have a bunch of different features that I can view in my gradebook. And so I will say off the bat, I do not work for Schoology. I didn't create Schoology. I don't give Schoology all of its updates. I have nothing to do with Schoology. I'm not associated with them at all. However, I have used Schoology authentically as a teacher, and I've also used the IC Gradebook as a teacher. And personally, I really prefer the Schoology Gradebook just because it's so much more interactive than what I can get with the IC Gradebook. So one of the things that I can do is when I'm in my gradebook, I can switch between grading periods. And so I can see, let's say I really want to like go over during parent-teacher conferences what my student completed during Q1, but we're now in the Q2 grading period. I can switch back to my Q1 grades and see all of the stuff that my kids had in there. I can also filter all of my assignments by category. So let's say that I only want to see all of the practice grades that I assigned for that grading period. I can select practice from my dropdown in materials, and it'll filter through just my practice grades. I can also do the same by due date. I can choose if I want to have my most recent assignments first, or if I want to have my most recent assignments at the back. I can also add materials directly from my gradebook if I would like to. Just a note on this, unless you're adding a grade column, I recommend that you make all of your assignments, discussions, quizzes, everything like that directly in your materials page so that you can organize it better. If you add it from the gradebook, it's just going to dump in your overall materials page. And the other cool thing that I can see is my view feature. So in my view feature, it will highlight specific cells. When I was in the classroom, I use this marked missing with submission button every day, because at the end of the class period or at the end of the night, when I had an assignment that had passed the due date, I would go in, put in the grades for that assignment, and I would mark all of the grades that hadn't been put in as missing so that my kids knew, like, hey, you need to turn this in. Usually that's all they need as a reminder. And then 90% of my kids would get stuff turned in. So when they turn that in, that missing flag is still checked, and I have to uncheck that flag. So that marked missing with submission, it makes it super easy because it highlights all of the cells that have that missing flag checked, but my student has then made an assignment. So let's see what this looks like in real time. So here I have my gradebook, and you can see my overall grade here. So if I want to see all of the things that I have marked as classwork, I can select my classwork view, and then it's just going to filter in all of the class assignments that I've assigned. I can do the same thing for all of my other categories. So maybe I just want to see homework. Maybe I only grade homework once a week, and so it's easier for me to filter the view this way and then just chug along and get all my grading done. And then if I want to just see a breakdown of how my students are scoring in each category, I can click that All Category Summaries button. And that's going to give me the final calculated grade for each of those categories. So here's how they're doing on their assessments. Here's classwork, homework, projects. Again, this is super convenient when I have parent-teacher conferences and I have students or parents who are really confused about, well, my kid gets A's on all of their tests. How come they have a C in the class? Well, I can pull up this viewing category and I can, excuse me, easily see, oh, well, they're doing really well on their assessments, but they don't turn any classwork or homework in. And so that's a super nice view for me to have. Again, I can adjust so I can have my most recent assignments first, or I can have my most recent assignments last. I can also filter if I'm really bad about putting due dates on things, or I don't like putting due dates on things. Maybe I use the student completion rules instead of due dates. I can also sort by the date that I created the assignments. And then here you can see it'll tell me how many students are in that category. So right now, I have 33 assignments that have passed the due date and I need to grade. And so what it's going to do is it's going to highlight those categories for me so that I can see them. Unfortunately, I don't really know all of the things that are in my gradebook right now because it is my sandbox course, so I play around a lot with it. But again, I can select all of these, and that's what it looks like. So it'll give me that light blue highlight whenever I have my highlight cells feature. And then when I want to get rid of it, again, I just go back in and click it. And so now you can see that none of my cells are highlighted because I don't have those check marks there. If I want to add an assignment or a test or quiz or a discussion, I can do that directly from my gradebook if I wanted to. So I just click this add button. And then it's going to take me to my assignment creation page. And then when I create my assignment, you can see that I will have that assignment and it'll just show up right here at the bottom of my overall materials page. I can also just add a grade column, and then that won't create an assignment or any sort of other thing that goes on my main page. So this is really great for, let's say I have my students take an exam in Illuminate. And so everything they access is through Illuminate. I don't need them to have any sort of way to access that assignment later on. I can just create a grade column. Again, I can go through and I can create. Now, one important thing that I also want to note is that when I'm creating my grade columns, my assignments, my assessments, there's this little cute button here that says set as midterm and final. And I am not ever going to use it because, long story short, it's going to mess up the grade calculation and what goes to Passback. So we're not going to use this button here. Not ever in your whole life. If you would like to weight something differently, I can change the factor. I can change the points that it's worth. I can make my own grade category that's called final exam and make it worth 10% of the grade, and then just put that one assessment in my final grade category. But I am not ever going to set it as a midterm final. So I'm not ever going to click this button. So then you can see that my grading column is going to be added here in today's test. Now, so when I'm going through and I'm grading, just like I see, I can go through and I can put in my grades manually, just like this, directly from my gradebook. Now, let's say that, it's an assignment and I just want to give everybody credit for my assignment. What I can do, actually, I'm going to show you this first. So if I'm going through and I'm putting in all all of my grades here. And now I've put in my grades. And I want to say, oh, so if you don't have a grade in here, I want to mark it as missing. I could just leave it blank, but if I leave it blank, it's not going to impact their grade at all. And in my experience, if it doesn't impact their grade at all, my students have less of a fire under them to actually get it done, and they tend to forget about it, and then they rage when the end of the semester comes and I end up putting in zeros for all of those missing things, because I've had kids go from an 82.05, they're missing a few assignments and I don't hit that missing flag, so they don't see that reflected in their gradebook, and they'll tank to a D-. And so then they start to panic and they lose their minds. So I recommend that you put in the missing flag when something is actually missing. So I have my grades here, and these students here were absent. For some reason, they didn't do it. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit this mark empty cells missing. And when I do that, it's going to automatically go through all of the cells that don't have any information in it, and it's going to hit that missing flag. When I put the missing flag in, you can see that it's going to calculate that grade as a 0. So let's say that my student Erin Kimmel here she ended up turning in her exit ticket assignment. She put it on my desk. I've graded it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that flag. I'm going to uncheck missing, and now I can put in her score. And if I want to say something like, great job on the assignment, took off points for being late. I'm just going to hit this display to student button, and now they'll be able to see that grade comment. So you can see here, if I have put a comment on one of my gradebook entries, I'll have that little speech bubble appear here. I can click on it, and the comment appears to me. This will also, because I've clicked this display to student, display in the gradebook next to this assignment. So my comments will all be there. Whatever comments I have displayed to students are also displayed to parents as the parents view the gradebook. I can also choose to edit assignments. So let's say that I accidentally made this assignment out of 100 points, but I only wanted it to be 10 points. Well, again, I just click this button here. I'm going to hit edit, and then I can just change that to 10 points there. Now, let's say that you use that copy to courses feature when you are setting up your gradebook, and you accidentally made duplicate categories, and you've been assigning different materials to all your different categories, and now your gradebook is super messed up. Instead of having to go individually one through one and see which one is assigned to which category and if it's right or not, what I can do is I can use my bulk edit feature. So all I need to do is I'm going to go to, show you that one more time, my 3 little hole punch dots, and I'm going to select bulk edit. And see here, now I can see every single assignment that I've created in my gradebook. And then from here, what I can do is I can change the category. I can change the max amount of points. I can put due dates on things that need due dates. I can adjust the grading period. So when I adjust the grading period, let's say that it's the last day of Q1. Well, my grading period is going to auto default to whatever grading period I'm currently in. But I wanted a bunch of assignments that I created on that last day before Q1 ended to actually be for Q2. But I didn't change that grading period. Here's a super easy way that I can go through and make sure that I have the correct grading period selected. I can also delete assignments right from here. All right, let's see what else I need to talk about. Let's go over the point values for our flags. So as you can see, I have 3 exceptions that I can mark an assignment with. My missing exception is going to auto-calculate that grade as a 0. So anytime I have that missing flag, it will automatically calculate the flag as a 0. And that 0 is going to stay until I uncheck the flag. My incomplete flag is just going to show that my student did not complete the assignment. And so as you can see right here, it doesn't have any like negative weight towards the assignment, but it's also not going to let me put in a grade for that assignment. So let's say that I have a student who turns something in and it's only halfway done. I could do this incomplete flag just to remind them like, hey, you need to finish this up. But what I typically do is I'll put in a missing flag with a comment. Or I'll give them the reduced score. So let's say that my student only did half of this assignment, so they only got 5 points. I could then put in my grade comment. So that way my student knows why they got partial credit for that. The other thing, or the other flag that I can use is my excused flag. So my excused flag is going to say, you didn't need to do this assignment, you're excused from it. And so it's not going to take any points away for the student not doing the assignment, but it's also not going to give the student a score for that assignment. So let's say that I have a student who did an alternative project instead of a test or a quiz. What I could do is in the grade book, I could mark that test or quiz as excused, and I could have a single grade column for that student that had the project. More likely is I have a student who was absent for an extended period of time due to a medical illness, or something happened in her family and she had to leave, or he had to go somewhere that was excused. And so I want to excuse him from some of the classwork that he missed because I don't need him to complete that. I would then use that excused flag, and it's a quick communication to, nope, you don't have to do this assignment. It's good, and it's not negatively impacting your grade. We went over comments. So when I have my drop down for most of my assignments, and Maddie, you can chime in here as to why some of my assignments do not have the like full array of options that I see.
It depends on the kind of assignment it is.
Cool. So we can see here my 1.3 homework. I have a large variety of options. So let's say that I just want to give all of my students 10 points for doing their homework. All I have to do is click on my 3-hole punch, and I'm going to go to set all grades. So I can set all of my grades to, I want to give them all 10 out of 10. And so what that'll do is it'll just fill it all the way down for me, 10 out of 10. I can then go in and be like, oh, just kidding, Digital Coach Lasasso, she actually didn't do it. I'm going to flag hers as missing. I can then say, oh, well, Digital Coach Lasasso then turned it in. I'm going to uncheck my missing flag, and I'm going to give her an 8. So if I want to, I can then track my revisions. So again, I went to that 3-hole punch on the assignment. I'm going to select Trek Revisions, and then I can select a student. And you can see how many times I have updated the grade and at what time I updated that grade. This is also very nice if you suspect that maybe you left your computer open and one of your students got into your gradebook and changed all of their grades. You can use this revision history to see what they changed or did not change. We went over bulk edit. Oh, another huge thing. Don't ever unpublish your materials. So let's say that I'm in my class and we're done with this unit. So we already finished the Newsella sample unit, and I don't want my kids to go back into it. I don't want them to get confused. Maybe like it's December and they have a whole bunch of folders they have to navigate through. I might be tempted to unpublish this folder, but I am not going to do that, because what will happen is it's going to unpublish all of the assignments that are associated with that folder. And what that ends up doing is distorting the view. So it's essentially going to like take those assignments out of the student view of the gradebook. And so they'll see a separate grade with none of the assignments from the folder that you unpublished. Then you'll see from your end. So you can see we have an example here that if I unpublish a material or a set of materials, I'll see as the teacher that my grade material is a C, a 73.3%. But my students and parents are going to see that their calculated grade is a 70.67. And on top of that, only that published grade, that 70.67, is going to report to IC if I am engaged in Passback. So if I'm a Passback school, that published grade is what is going to be pushed to IC. So I'm not going to unpublish materials. Instead, what I can do is I can go to edit and I can lock my assignments so that my students can no longer make submissions to it. Or my personal favorite is I can just create a folder, and that folder is going to be for all of my past units. And so then once I'm done with my Newsella sample unit, I can just drag this folder right into my past units so that I can keep things on my main materials page nice, cleaned up, but nothing is getting unpublished. Again, we're not going to unpublish. Unpublishing is bad. We also already went over, we're not using midterm and final. Don't do it. Just say no. All right, we're in the final stretch. So we're going to hit rubrics, and then I'm going to tackle all of your wonderful, pertinent questions to the session. So when we're making our rubrics, what we can do is we're going to go to grade setup. And then you can see here are all of the rubrics that I've made or used with assignments somewhere in my course. So these are all of the rubrics that I can then select on. But let's say none of these are fitting my needs right now. And so I want to create a new rubric. All I'm going to do is hit this add button, and then I'm going to select rubric. And so then I'll be able to title my rubric. And I have two options here. So I can add my own criteria. So that's going to be, let's say, category 1. I can talk about category 1 includes And then I can also customize my point values. I can add a grading scale. So maybe I want this to be 10 points, this guy to be 8 points, this one over here is 6 points, and then I want to add 4, 2, and I want to add 1 at the back, 0. And so then I can go in here and I can customize what these categories mean. I can also, so if I just want to add another criteria, so I want to add another category, I can click this criteria button. Now let's say that I only want this assignment to be 10 points. So as I continue to add criteria, it's going to give me the total points of my rubric, but I only want a 10-point rubric. So what I can do is I can make one category. So this is going to be your actual final grade. And so you have all of these options, 10 through 2, or 10 through 0. And then I want these just to be strictly feedback. So what I can do is I can make all of these 0 points. And I can customize my text here to give that point of feedback. And that way I can select any of the feedback bullets that I need and have it not affect the overall grade. So I can have another 8 categories if I want to, just full of feedback, but my rubric is going to remain only 10 points. Now, if I'm using Mastery Tracker, I want to track specific standards or custom objectives that I've set, I can add the objectives straight to my rubric. So all I did there was I just clicked on Add Learning Objective. I'm going to select Custom because I've made some of my own. I'm going to click into the folder that makes the most sense. And this one is going to be all about finding and understanding sources. So then it's going to import that learning objective right into my rubric. So it gives me the title and the description that I already put in. And you can see when I added that, it's just going to copy the categories that I have from the row above. So maybe this one only has 4 categories that I need. I can click on these X's. So you see when I hover up to where the point value is, you see this little gray X here. I can get rid of those. So you can see that some of my criteria or my learning objectives only have 3 points and some of them have 5 points. I can mix up however I need to. So once I'm done creating my rubric, I'm just going to hit Create. And then that will be saved. Yep, so this is I unfortunately had another sample. That's why I was confused. So that's my sample right there. Now, one point I am going to make, if, let's say I assign this to one assignment, and then for the next assignment, I want to use the same rubric, but I only want it to be out of 5 points instead out of 10. I'm going to want to copy this rubric, and I'm going to want to make a new one, because if I adjust the point values, if I adjust any criteria, if I adjust anything at all, it's going to retroactively impact the assignments that are attached to it. So if I've used this rubric for 3 other assignments, and now I want to use it for my next one, but I only want it to be out of 5 points, if I go in this rubric and I change the point value to 5, that's also going to change the point value on my other 3 rubrics, and it's going to impact the grade that my students got on those other assignments. So all I'm going to do then is I am just going to click here. I like to save my rubrics to resources. I can fiddle around with them in there. And so this is my saved copy. I can edit however I want to. And then I can go ahead and save this. And then I'm just going to add it back to my course. So now we can go back. And we can see that my rubric is going to be here. So this is my new 4-point rubric that I made back in those resources. Now let's say I'm making an assignment, and as I'm making the assignment, I think to myself, oh man, Drea, this assignment sets itself up great for a rubric. What I can do is I can go down here to scale/rubric, and right here, so you can see, here's all of those rubrics that we just saw in my grade setup, but I can also create a new rubric and follow those same steps. Once I create that rubric, I can attach it to my assignment. I'm going to show it to students so that students can see the rubric. I'm going to hit create. And then we can see that that rubric is now saved in my grade setup as well, right there. All right, I just covered a whole lot of information. So one, I want you to remember that this is being recorded. You can access it at any time if you want. You can also keep this slide deck forever and ever. Go ahead and save it to your drive. You can even bookmark it if you would like to. I know it's beautiful, so you want to look at it all the time. So you have access to all of these resources. If you would like to see any notes on the return to school, how this fits in with the DPS 2021 priorities, you can feel free to read any of these slides down here at your own leisure, at your own pace. Makes for some great nighttime reading. And from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start asking questions. So if you're ever confused on who you can contact for support around Schoology or around any of your instructional technology needs, you can use this tiny URL, the tinyurl.com/dpsedtech, and that will take you to finding who the digital coach support is for your school. Separated by school alphabetically, you just find your school, and across from there is going to be your coach. And so now I'm going to go ahead and start answering some questions that there are. Off the bat, my moderators, are there any super prevalent questions that I should answer before I navigate into that doc?
No, one of the things was trying to find those dots, those little gray dots on different things so you can get into the real details of your gradebook. So I think practicing that's going to be something people will want to get used to.
Yep, absolutely. So there's a difference between my little hole punch dots. So this, when it's on the assignment, so you can see I'm highlighting this one assignment here. This is going to be just for that assignment. This, so it's not on an assignment, just in my regular toolbar next to all of those views and filters. This little 3-hole punch guy is going to be where I can access my overall gradebook features, my bulk edit. This is how, if I wanted to, I can print grade reports. So I can go here. Maybe I only want a grade report for Leon. I can generate that report. And then it's going to show me a breakdown of, you can see the overall grade category is here with his score on that grade category. You can see that then it's an assignment breakdown. All of my gradebook comments are here. And then what's super cool, if they're accessing this online, so this is kind of what the students see when they click into their grades. This is also what the parents will see when they click into their grades for each class. This is the breakdown of what it'll look like. So we have our overall grading period grade here with my categories listed under that. And you see how all of these are in blue. That means that they're Schoology attached assignments or assessments. So they're not grade columns. And so when I click on the assignment, Gradebook can really become interactive. So the more details I have attached to these assignments when I set them up, the more instructions I have in those description boxes. If I attach Google Worksheets to them using the Assign from App Google Drive, if I include links, maybe you, in order to do an assignment, you have to watch the micro lecture first. That was synchronous live, but I recorded it. I can attach all of those there. The more information I have, the easier it is for students and parents to go through and see themselves like, oh, I have to do all of this stuff. I'm missing this assignment, this assignment, this assignment. And they then have access to completing those assignments without you necessarily having to step in and print out new copies for them or sit down after school for 3 hours and explain the assignment, because I can attach that all to the assignment itself in Schoology.
Another question we had, Drea, was the best way to conference with students as you're referring to their Schoology assignments and grades, sitting down and only showing their stuff. So say you're doing it with parents or just with the student, only showing their things. And the suggestion was that they that the teacher go in and view as student as they're sitting down with that student, so that only their stuff is showing, and or to go into the advisor dashboard to look at it that way with the student.
So my number one is always going to be advisor dashboard, just because that view as student will give me a sample view of the materials on that page, but I'm going to default back to my teacher view when I go into the gradebook. So then I get into that same issue of like, whoop, there's everybody else's grades. So if I'm just focused on the grades, you can do what I just did and have their grade report right here that you can access. And this is just all of that student's grades that I can go through with parent or student. Or I can go here, I can go up to my tools, and I can select advisor dashboard. And then in my advisor dashboard, I'm going to start to type out a student's name. And here's where I always got caught up. I would just type in their whole name and hit enter. No, you have to type in their name and then select the student. So I just selected my student. And so then you can see for this student, here are all of the courses that my student is a part of. I selected a very busy student here. They have a lot of stuff to do. So then what I can do is I can click into their courses. You can see their overall course grade right here. So this student is not doing very well in this sample course. So then what I can do is when I click on that, I can view this course as the student would. Oh, your grading period options, that's a super great question. When you are creating a course, or when you see that like I'm creating a course, you do have like 1,000,001 options. Don't panic. IC, when the IC sets up your courses, it takes the course from IC, pulls it into Schoology. It's automatically going to set those grading periods for you. So as you can see in my grade setup here, I really shouldn't have to do anything with my grading periods and final weights, because that's going to pull from IC. Any other questions that I can answer that you want to just drop in that gradebook Q&A doc?
I'll just highlight for you, Drea. So you can see that edit for the grading periods in your view. Teachers will not be able to see that. So those are all locked based upon what's in Infinite Campus, along with the name of the course. So you can't mess it up. That's the good news. And if you try, IC will just overwrite it and do that again. I will say that some creative folks have found a way to disassociate the grading period from their course through magic and trickery. I'll just remind you that bulk edit option is always your go-to for troubleshooting anything. It is like the best way to figure out what's going on with your grades.
Yep. Another thing that I get a lot of support questions on is I signed like my assignment or I signed this quiz and it's not showing up in the gradebook. Like I know I did everything right. I assigned it. It's open. It's published. My students say that they're taking it, but I can't find it in the gradebook. Again, if you go to that bulk edit option, a lot of the times what happens is it's accidentally set to the ungraded category instead of assessments or classwork or whatever they wanted it to be. So once they set it to the correct category, it'll then populate correctly in the gradebook. Any other questions that I can answer?
Can you show how to select a grading category in an assignment, Drea?
Yep. All right, so I'm here and I am going to make an assignment in my course. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this Add Materials button, and I'm going to select Add an Assignment. So of course I'm going to title my assignment. Now, the name of your assignment is what it's going to show up in as the gradebook. So I recommend that you, instead of naming everything homework, you give it some sort of classification where it's going to be easy for you and the students to know which homework you're talking about. So maybe you want to number your homework assignments. So homework number 1, or maybe you want to say homework cells and reproduction. Or maybe you just want to give it a nice snazzy title that doesn't even have homework in the name. Cool, do that. I'm going to use homework number 1. Again, the description is where I'm going to fill in any information that my students need to complete the assignment. So here's where I can put the directions, links, photos. Sometimes, so especially if it's like it's the first time that my students are doing something, or it's a little bit of a complicated task, I'll put in links to screencast videos so that they can choose to walk through an example of me doing it before they get started. So not only can I go ahead and link stuff directly in the description, but I can also attach it down here at the bottom. And I can add an audio video recording if I need to do that as well. Maybe for some accommodations, I'm going to read out those instructions. I can also attach those here. The Assign From app is then where I can, let's say that I have a worksheet that I want my kids to create. I can click that Assign From app, and then I like to use the search feature. And so then it's going to search for me. And let's say some of my files in Google Drive has very similar names. What I can do is I can hit this View button right here. And it'll show me, it'll pop up in a new window what that worksheet is. Okay, so yep, this is the one I want. I'm going to click it so that it's selected in blue here and attach. And that's going to force a copy for all of my students. So it's going to update all the sharing permissions that I need. I will be an editor. My student will be an editor. It's going to save a copy of this in my drive. The students will have access in their drive, and it'll be nicely put together so I can quickly view through all of the assignments directly in Schoology if I need to. I love this feature. If you are doing any sort of worksheet attachments, use the Assign from App feature. From there, I'm going to put a due date on it. I'm going to change the points. And then I'm going to select my grading category. So because I don't have any of my categories starred, you'll see that it doesn't auto-select any of my categories. So from this dropdown, I can select whatever the grading category it belongs to. So this is a homework assignment. I'm going to select homework. And then if I wanted a rubric, again, I could select a rubric that I could attach to it. Now, if I select a rubric, that rubric is going to replace the point value. So see, I have my SLO rubric here. Instead of it being 10 points, it auto set it to 12 points. And you can see that I now can't edit that because I have my rubric selected. And then if I wanted to, I could also align some learning objectives here. Really awesome if I'm using a Mastery Tracker. And then I can individually assign this as well. So I'm going to go ahead and create. And you can see here is my assignment. And then I can also view that in the gradebook. So that's going to be due. And it is somewhere in here, I promise you. All right, anything else I can show y'all?
Jerry, are you aware, I believe it's social studies, they have rubrics already created within their groups that you can dig down into for rubrics. Do you know how to go grab those for, say, social studies content or whoever's content that are already created by the department?
Let's go in there. So as you can see, I just selected my groups here. And I'm going to go into my curriculum group. This happens to be 7th grade social studies. From here, I can select resources. And look at all this. They've already pre-created all of these different things for me. It's so nice. So I'm going to click into where they have my rubrics. And so here are all of the pre-created rubrics that are available. And so now what I can do is I can add these directly to my courses. And now I don't have to make any of those rubrics because they're already pre-created for me. So you can see that I just added that rubric there. And here it is. And then once I've added it to my class, I can go ahead and maybe I don't want this to be 200 points. Maybe I want it to be 5 points. So what I can do is I can do 0, 1, 3, and 5, 0, 0, 0, 0. So I can now save that. And so now my rubric here is out of 5 points. And that didn't do anything to the original rubric because when I added it to my class, I went ahead and made a copy.
And I'll add as a quick pro tip, what we've seen some schools do is you'll have one teacher who's pretty Schoology savvy go ahead and create some rubrics for folks. And then they have a collaborative Schoology course or group that they use to allow each other to kind of copy from there. So if rubrics are overwhelming for you, but you have someone who's a Schoology rock star, know that you can still collaborate and share those materials, just like Drea showed you from the curriculum groups.
Any other questions that I can answer for you?
It looks like we've covered the questions in the doc. I didn't know if we were switching over to a Google Meet for any other live questions or no.
We definitely can do that. If you would like to ask some live questions, I will go ahead and drop a link. Nope, I can't do that. So here's what I'm going to say. If you have specific questions like to your classroom, you want to do some troubleshooting, I would love to give you this time to make sure that you can connect with your digital coach. So again, all I did is I just went to that link, that tinyurl.com/dpsedtech. And I'm going to find my digital coach, and here are the coaches' names and their email addresses. And all of us are more than happy to help support you with your gradebook adventures. I guess I could just make a new meet right now if you would like to hop into a new meet. I'll just drop that in the Q&A.
Do we want to just send them over here, Drea?
Drea, I think they can join with that link I put in the chat.
Can they? Okay, cool.
I think so, but put it in the Q&A and have people click on it and see if they can join us in here.
Perf. Let's make things happen.